They tell you a freshman dorm is the safest place on campus. Too many eyes, too much noise, too many people in and out for anything truly bad to happen. But safety is a story we tell ourselves, and stories can be edited. Doors can be propped up, cameras can blink, and a life can slide off the frame so quietly that no one hears the scrape. This is the story of Jessica Miller, 19 years old, first semester at a mid-sized college in New Jersey, a place with brick walkways, maple trees that burn red in October, and a glossy admissions brochure that promises belonging. Her parents kept that brochure on the fridge until move-in day. It had a photo of the quad at sunset, seniors throwing graduation caps, a marching band in the distance. The tagline read, "Build your future here." Jessica believed it. Everyone did. That's how these places work. She moved into Maple Hall on a hot Wednesday in late August, the kind of afternoon where the sun bakes the asphalt until you can smell it. Her mom triple-checked the checklist. Extra long twin sheets, shower caddy, printer paper, a pair of slippers because dorm floors are never clean. Her dad made 3 separate trips from the parking lot, pretending the boxes were lighter than they were. He only stopped teasing when he saw Jessica's face, excited, nervous, a little pale in the fluorescent light of the hallway. He hugged her with both arms and didn't let go right away. Her roommate was Alyssa Nguyen, taller than Jess, athletic, with a calm voice that made you trust her. They had matched online through the school's portal and had exchanged exactly 12 messages about who would bring the mini fridge and whether either of them snored. Alyssa played club volleyball. Jessica was thinking about joining the student radio station because she liked stories and because she liked the way voices felt when they were told the truth. They pushed the beds against opposite walls and raised them on those plastic risers that always look like they're going to collapse. They taped fairy lights over the window and hung a poster board above Jessica's desk with Polaroids, a dog with one bent ear, a sunset over the Delaware River, her little brother in a Halloween cape. On the closet door, she taped a note from home in her mom's slanted handwriting. "Proud of you. Eat real food. Call me." Her mom added a smiley face. Her dad added a crooked heart. Night settled early that first week. People drifted in the hallway. Doors remained open for hours like a ritual offering. The RA, Miguel, stuck his head in every 20 minutes doing the same joke, fire hazard, and then handing out a bowl of dum-dum lollipops that somehow never ran out. Someone in the lounge brought a speaker that never should have cost what it did, and the bass rattled the exit sign over the stairwell. Jess found it comforting. The noise felt like proof that nothing bad could happen to you when the whole world was awake. Classes began, and her schedule felt like a dare. Intro to Media Studies, Calculus, freshman writing seminar, with a professor who wore the same brown blazer 4 days a week, and an 8 a.m. lab she couldn't even pretend to like. She set 2 alarms and kept a third on the other side of the room, so she had to stand up to turn it off. By the second week, she knew the barista at the campus coffee shop well enough to say the usual and mean it. Iced coffee, 2 pumps vanilla, oat milk, the kind of detail you can only memorize when you're building a life from scratch. It didn't take long for the warnings to start. Alyssa had a way of delivering them without sounding like a parent. "Watch your drink if you go out," she'd say, looping her hair into a bun before practice. "Text me when you're walking back," like literally while you're walking. It wasn't paranoia, it was muscle memory, handed down from upperclassmen to freshmen like a whispered recipe. Jess promised she would. She meant it. On the 3rd Friday, Jessica went to her first real party. You know the kind. A house just off campus with a sagging porch and a couch that nobody should sit on. A handwritten sign taped to the door read, $5 for cups, even though somehow nobody actually paid. Inside smelled like beer and cheap cologne, and the citrus snap of cleaning spray they only used after the place had already turned. In the kitchen, a guy with a baseball cap on backwards poured blue liquid into a line of cups while telling a story that made him seem important. That's where Jessica met Ryan Cooper. He wasn't introduced. He just appeared at her elbow like he'd been there the whole time. Tall, sharp jaw, hair too long for the student handbook, but exactly the right length for the photos his friends posted. His t-shirt was the kind that costs $40 and pretends it didn't. He smiled without showing his teeth. When he looked at Jess, he did the thing that people do when they want to make you feel like the only person in the room. He turned his shoulders toward her and leaned in like every other sound was a distant wave. "First year?" he asked, like he already knew. "Is it that obvious?" she said. "Only the brand new lanyard," he said, flicking his eyes toward the student ID around her neck. "You'll ditch it by October. I'm Ryan." "Jessica," she said, and her voice caught a little on the second syllable. He poured less into her cup than into his. She noticed and accidentally decided that meant something good. They stood near the sink for a full hour and didn't move, the party forming and reforming around them like weather. He asked easy questions. "Where are you from? What are you studying? What do you want to do after college?" She didn't have the last answer. He nodded like that was the right answer. "Nobody does," he said. "The trick is to pretend." Then he said a sentence that would live in her chest for months. "You've got a face for radio," he joked, then immediately shook his head. "That came out wrong. I mean your voice. It sounds like a story I'd keep listening to." It's astonishing how little it takes to tip a person toward you. A sentence can do it. A look. A shared joke in a kitchen where the floor is sticky and the light is bad. Jessica didn't know his last name yet. She would learn it at 2:14 a.m. when he texted her from an unknown number with a simple "home." And she'd text back, "Yes." He'd reply, "Good." And she'd tell Alyssa with an embarrassed smile, "He has kind eyes." Like that was a detail you could hold. By the end of September, Ryan had become a fact. He wasn't the kind of boyfriend who posted photos with captions. He existed at the edges. The guy at the back of the dining hall who didn't wait in line. The presence at the party who never seemed drunk but always had a drink. The guy who knew the back door to every building on campus, and the person with the code to the basement, where the art students had a key they weren't supposed to share. When he cut class, he didn't brag about it. He just shrugged and said, "It's an 8 a.m., Jess. I'm not the Pope." When he showed up late, he brought a coffee. When he showed up early, he didn't knock. There were red flags. There always are. The first was small. He borrowed $20 in cash for parking and forgot to pay it back. 2 weeks later, when Jessica laughed and asked if she should hire a collection agency, he looked genuinely confused, then embarrassed, then generous, handing her 40 with a wink. "Interest," he said, brushing it off like a magic trick. It worked. The second flag came tied to a compliment. "You're prettier without all the makeup," he said, "like when it's just you." It sounded sweet until she realized she adjusted how she left the dorm. More mascara on nights without him. Less when she thought they might run into each other. The third flag didn't look like a flag at all. It looked like concern. It was after midnight on a Tuesday in early October when he texted, "Where are you? Your Snap location is weird." She'd fallen asleep in the lounge after finishing a paper. Her phone buzzed her awake like an alarm. "Lounge," she wrote back, adding a selfie with a blanket up to her nose. He responded with, "Good. Don't sleep there. Text me when you're back." She did. It felt like care. Later, Alyssa would say gently, "That's a lot of monitoring for 2 months in." Jess rolled her eyes then. Red flags look white when you wave them fast enough. Campus has a rhythm by October. Midterms like an incoming tide. Leaves that crunch like bubble wrap. The first nights when you can see your breath. Jessica studied in the library until it closed, then studied at her desk with a hoodie on and her feet tucked under her. She FaceTimed her brother to help him with algebra and bought cough drops for Alyssa when she got a cold and said things like, "I'm going to be okay," out loud to herself like a dare. She kept a journal, but not every day, and never when things were easy. October 7th. Felt dumb in calculus. Prof called on me and my brain went blank. Thought about Ryan and totally lost it. October 12th. Ryan said he might stop drinking for a while. I offered to do it with him. He laughed and said I didn't need to be so dramatic. October 15th. Dreamed my teeth were falling out. Classic. Might be stressed. The party that changes the story didn't feel like a big thing. It was just another Friday with a group chat that wouldn't stop buzzing. Alyssa had a volleyball tournament in Pennsylvania and left that afternoon with a duffel bag, promising to bring back a Wawa sandwich because ours are better. Jess said she might stay in, write a draft for her media studies class, watch a show. She meant it when she said it. Then Ryan texted a pin drop, an address 2 blocks off campus. "Come for an hour," he wrote. "I'll walk you back." The house had a name. They always do. The greenhouse. Not for the paint, but for the way the porch light glowed through a veil of tinted plastic someone taped up for a Halloween vibe. It was crowded in a loose, chaotic way. A playlist shuffled too quickly, as if the person controlling it couldn't stand to let a song finish. The air smelled like cups that had been used twice already. Ryan moved with a confidence that left pockets of space around him. People nodded. He nodded back. He introduced Jess not as his girlfriend, but as Jessica, like the word was enough definition. When she reached for a drink, he took the cup first, sniffed it theatrically, and handed it back. "See," he said, as if he'd just thrown himself in front of a bus. She smelled nothing but artificial fruit. She laughed because that's what you do when someone pretends to save you. In the living room, a guy named Lucas argued too loudly with a girl about whether a band sold out when they signed to a bigger label. In the kitchen, a girl with glitter on her face stirred something purple in a bowl with a wooden spoon, but never stopped texting. In a back bedroom, a door was locked from the inside. It rattled once, then went still. Jess wasn't a heavy drinker. She knew her limits. 2 cups, 3 if she ate. She finished one, declined another. Ryan kissed her temple absent-mindedly and kept talking to a guy with a nose ring who had a laugh like a bark. Every few minutes, Ryan looked over his shoulder to make sure she was still there. She was, until she wasn't. That's when she went to the bathroom and saw herself in the mirror. She didn't look bad. She looked like a 19-year-old at a party. But there was a tightness in her face that made her look older. She ran water over her wrists, a trick her mom taught her for anxiety, and counted to 30. In the hallway outside the bathroom, the music shifted into something with a heavy bass line that made the floor feel alive. When she came out, Ryan was gone. She texted him, "Where'd you go?" No answer. Another text. "Rye?" 3 dots appeared, then vanished. Disappearing typing bubbles are their own kind of ghost. She waited. She looked around, saw a guy who might have been in her writing seminar but couldn't be sure. He nodded like he knew her. She nodded back like she knew him. She took a breath and told herself not to be that person. The one who panics because her boyfriend didn't respond to a message he didn't promise to read. She found him on the porch, talking to a girl in a black jacket who stood too close and laughed too easily. Jess didn't get the sense that anything had happened. She got the sense that anything could. Ryan saw her and did the thing he always did when she looked at him for too long. He grinned, pulled her into a hug that smelled like laundry detergent and seltzer, and said, "Hey, you good?" She nodded. He said, "Walk soon?" She nodded again. A few minutes later, he said he had to grab something from upstairs. 2 minutes, he said, holding up 2 fingers like a scout. She watched him go and felt that empty feeling again. The one that comes when an event breaks into small pieces and you can't hold them all at once. That's when Tasha arrived. Tasha was in Jessica's writing seminar. She wore a denim jacket with thrift store patches and a ring on her thumb she twisted when she was thinking too hard. She had a way of entering rooms like she already knew the joke but wouldn't ruin it. She didn't pretend to be surprised to see Jess. She looked almost relieved. "Hey," she said over the music. "You okay?" "Yeah," Jess said. "Just waiting for Ryan." Tasha's mouth pressed into a line that made dimples that weren't exactly happy. "Listen," she said, lowering her voice. "This is going to sound weird, but we should move to the kitchen. It's louder but less, you know." She gestured vaguely toward the living room, where 2 guys had begun a competition to see who could do the dumbest thing with a folding table. Jess understood. Tasha didn't say safe, but she didn't have to. They moved to the kitchen, which smelled like beer and pizza in a way that made Jess crave a salad. Tasha handed her a water bottle. "Take a few sips," she said. "Trust me." Jess did. Her head cleared a little. The world came back into focus in a way that made the room feel smaller. "You know Ryan?" Jess asked. Tasha paused. "I know of him," she said carefully. "The answers that leave things unsaid are the ones you remember." Jess could have asked, "What does that mean?" She didn't. She said, "He'll be right back." Tasha nodded like she had been 19 once, too. "Text me if you need to walk," she said, and handed Jess her number with the name Tasha so Jess wouldn't forget where she knew her from. Ryan returned exactly 3 minutes later, a small plastic prescription bottle palmed fast enough that Jess wouldn't have seen it if she hadn't been looking for something to forgive. He slid it into his pocket and grinned like a kid shoplifting candy. "Ready?" he said, and without thinking, Jess nodded. They left together at 1:11 a.m. The air outside was cooler than it should have been for October. Jess's breath steamed a little in the streetlight. Ryan walked with hands in his jacket pockets, like he was keeping something warm. "Want to crash at mine?" he asked. "I should go back," Jess said. "Alyssa's at a tournament. My roommate. She'll be back tomorrow morning and I don't know. I should sleep." He nodded. "I'll walk you." They cut across the quad. The clock tower chimed with surprising politeness. Jess felt a surge of relief at the familiarity of the walk. The library's glass facade like a ship, the statue no one could agree on whether to decorate for holidays, the brick path that always seemed to be missing the same stone. The adrenaline of the house bled off into a quiet that felt like a promise. Jess squeezed Ryan's hand. He squeezed back. At the dorm, he kissed her at the entrance. Not dramatic, not long, just a kiss like punctuation. "Text me when you're upstairs," he said. She nodded. He stepped back, then paused like he'd remembered a homework assignment. "Hey," he said, "you didn't bring your bag tonight." "Just my phone," she said, tapping her pocket. He nodded like he was filing the information away. "Good," he said. The front desk attendant was half asleep behind a plastic sneeze guard and looked up only long enough to nod. Jess swiped her student ID and the door clicked open with that soft thunk that somehow always sounds relieved. She checked her watch without meaning to. 1:23 a.m. She texted Alyssa, "You win your game?" knowing she wouldn't see it until morning. Upstairs, the hall was quiet like a library after hours. Someone's door was cracked and leaking the sound of a sitcom from 5 years ago. The exit sign glowed existentially green at the end of the hall. Jessica's room, Maple 314, sat under a vent that hummed in a way that made winter feel closer. Inside, the room looked exactly like it had when she left. Bed made, laptop sleeping, a mug she shouldn't have left on the windowsill. She washed her face and laughed a little at the raccoon smudges on the towel, then laughed at the fact that she'd laugh at that. She set her phone to charge, then picked it back up out of habit. One text from Ryan. "Home?" She typed. "In bed. Good night." He responded with a black heart and a moon. She didn't overthink it. Not then. She set an alarm for 8:30 because she planned to get a jump on her writing seminar draft. The one about how modern true crime tells us more about our fear than our criminals. She had an angle she liked. She had a quote from a podcast that she wasn't sure she was allowed to use. But the professor was cool and would tell her how to cite it. Jess slept. Not deeply. The kind of sleep where you can still hear the hall. At 2:06 a.m., someone laughed near the elevators. At 2:44, a door closed harder than it should have. At 3:12, the RA's walkie-talkie crackled once, and then apologized by going quiet. At 3:47, Alyssa's team posted a blurry selfie in a van lit by someone's phone. At 4:01, a garbage truck somewhere blocks away clanged like a cymbal, and then was gone. At 4:32, Jessica's phone buzzed. She didn't check the time, she checked the sender. It was from Ryan. "You up?" She turned the brightness down and typed, "Sort of." "Come outside," he wrote. She frowned. "Now? I can't sleep. Walk?" She knew all the reasons to say no. She knew about campus alerts and safety emails and that a 19-year-old doesn't owe anyone a stroll at 4:30 in the morning. She also knew her heart and the way it leans toward people who ask softly. She lay there for a full minute, the phone warm in her hand, the room a small planet with one lamp lit. Then she texted, "Give me 5. She put on leggings and a sweatshirt, the gray one with the college crest she hadn't decided if she meant, and slid into her sneakers without untying them. She grabbed her student ID. She grabbed her key. Maple Hall uses a card system, not metal keys, not for students. But there's a spare metal key issued at move-in inside a small labeled envelope for emergencies only, the kind of thing you tuck into a drawer and forget until the building's power blinks. R.A. Miguel had joked about it at their first floor meeting. "That key," he'd said, pinching 2 fingers to show how small it was, "is like a nuclear launch code. You only use it when I tell you to." They laughed. He wasn't really laughing. Jess took the card. She held the little envelope with the metal key, looked at it like a superstition, and left it on the desk. She wasn't going far. She put her phone in her pocket, the screen face in because if she saw another message from Ryan, she wanted to choose to look. The hallway felt different when you're the only one moving through it. The exit sign wasn't comforting anymore. It felt like a rule. Jess walked softly even though no one listened, because walking softly makes you feel like you're doing the right thing. She didn't text Alyssa. She would later wish she had. She didn't tell Tasha. She would later wish that too. Downstairs, the front desk attendant was gone, replaced by a sign that said, "Back in 5," but obviously meant "I'm tired." She swiped her card. The door clicked. The night wrapped around her shoulders like a coat. Ryan waited near the courtyard benches, hands deep in his jacket pockets, hood up. He smiled because that's what you do when someone does what you asked. "Hey," he said. His voice fogged the air. "Thanks." Jess sat on the bench. "Couldn't sleep?" "Could I ever?" he said, and tried to make it a joke. It landed like a confession. He looked different at this hour, the edges softer, the grin less automatic. "I've been thinking," he said, "about dropping a class, about changing majors, about, I don't know, about not being this person." Jess looked at his face to see if he meant it. He did, and he didn't. That's how change starts. With sincerity that doesn't know where to go. They talked for 15 minutes that could be mistaken for intimacy. The kind that can only exist when the rest of the world is asleep. He asked if she wanted to walk to the convenience store by the gas station. "They're open all night," he said, but she shook her head. "I have class. Sleep is good." He nodded. "Another time," he said. They kissed once, an echo of earlier, and he walked her back to the door because that's how you prove you're not a villain. She swiped her card. The door clicked again. She waved through the glass. He waved back. She took the stairs because waiting for the elevator at this hour felt like a dare. She counted her steps because that's what people do when they want to make time do what they want. Back in the room, she set her phone to charge again and slid the little envelope with the metal key under the edge of her mousepad without thinking. She fell asleep in her sweatshirt. Her alarm blared at 8:30 and she swatted at it like a fly. Saturday unfolded like good weather. She FaceTimed her mom from the bookstore and held up a hoodie she wasn't going to buy. She munched on an overpriced granola bar and told Alyssa they should watch a movie later when she got back from the tournament. "Unless you collapse first," Jess said, "I'll carry you from the lobby like a war hero." In the afternoon, Ryan texted that he and Lucas might drive into the city that night for a DJ set that everyone had decided was important. "Not your scene," he wrote with a winky face. She agreed without being offended. He said they'd hang Sunday. She said okay. It all felt normal in a way that the future uses as camouflage. That evening, Jess opened a blank document titled "Monsters, Mirrors, and the American Mind, True Crime as Self-Portrait." She wrote her name in the top left corner. She changed the font twice. She wrote a sentence she liked and deleted it because she liked it and didn't trust that feeling. She texted Tasha that she was probably going to the library to work, then stayed at her desk because laziness and courage can look identical when you're 19. At 10:11 p.m., her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Party at Cedar." "You coming?" Jess typed. "Who is this?" No answer. She set the phone face down and told herself she was better than that. 5 minutes later, Ryan texted a photo from a card on the interstate. Bridge cables blurring, city lights like teeth. "Told you. Back late." She heart-reacted. At 10:39, Alyssa texted that the team won their second game and would be back by midnight. Jess texted a confetti emoji and said she'd wait up. She meant it. At 10:47, she opened Instagram. At 10:53, she closed it because nothing good happens there after 10. At 10:58, She stretched, turned off the desk lamp, left the string lights on, and brushed her teeth in the bathroom down the hall while a girl she barely knew told a long story about a professor who hated her on principle. At 11:12, Jess was back in the room. She put on socks because her feet were cold. She set her phone to Do Not Disturb because boundaries are easier to draw when you're not sure they'll be tested. At 11:31, she heard laughter in the hall that sounded like relief. At 11:39, she typed a new first sentence and didn't delete it. At 11:42, the fire alarm chirped once like it was thinking about an opinion and then decided to stay out of it. At 11:47 p.m., Jessica Miller left Maple Hall. The hall camera caught her from the shoulders up as she pulled a gray hood over her head and moved past the RA's door, which was closed. She didn't look at the lens because people who aren't doing anything wrong rarely do. She wore leggings and running shoes and the sweatshirt with the crest. She didn't carry a bag. She didn't carry a water bottle. She didn't carry anything at all. The lobby camera showed her swipe her card, push the door open with her elbow, and step into the night. A breeze lifted the edges of her hood like a hand. 3 minutes later, the lobby camera glitched. The screen fuzzed, lines streaking diagonally like rain on a windshield. It corrected itself. Then it glitched again, this time compressing the frame as if someone had tugged on the edges. A figure passed through the distorted picture, a smear that could be anyone. The timestamp paused for a single second before catching up to itself, restoring the present like it had just walked back into the room. Upstairs, in Maple 314, the room she shared with Alyssa was neat enough to photograph. The bed was made. The laptop was awake, cursor blinking in patience, monsters, mirrors, and the American mind in the header like a promise. On the desk, there was a ceramic dish shaped like a lemon where Jess kept hair ties and the earrings she forgot to wear. Next to the dish sat a small white envelope with the college seal. Inside the envelope was the spare metal dorm key. It was not inside the envelope anymore. It was on the desk, alone, catching the glow from the string lights, so that for a second it looked like it could start a fire. Downstairs, the desk attendant returned from wherever Back in 5 had taken them and signed a log sheet without reading the line above it. The pen skipped once. The page turned. Across campus, the convenience store by the gas station had a bored cashier whose eyes were on a tablet propped against the lottery machine. A kid with a backpack bought a single bottle of water and said nothing. A woman with a hoodie pulled low bought a pack of gum and left without her receipt. On the far edge of campus, Cedar Street ran parallel to a chain-link fence that kept nothing important out. A streetlight flickered near the third house, the one with the steps that never got shoveled in winter. At the end of the block, a car idled for too long without breaking any rules. At 11:58 p.m., a campus police cruiser turned slowly by Maple Hall, headlights sweeping over the benches where Jess had sat with Ryan at 4:30 that morning. The officers didn't see anyone. They didn't stop. It wasn't their job to escort every shadow back to bed. At 12:06 a.m., Alyssa messaged the floor group chat. "Back by 1, who's up?" 3 people thumbs-upped. Jess didn't. At 12:19 a.m., Tasha sent a DM. "How's the draft?" It showed delivered. It didn't show seen. At 12:31 a.m., the lobby camera glitched again. And then the hallway camera outside Maple 314 did something it had never done since installation. It froze on an empty frame, as if a hand had pressed pause, and then, with a soft digital sigh, it blinked to black. When the video returned, the hallway looked the same as it always did at that hour. Quiet, unbothered, a place where no one could ever disappear because someone would always see. No one saw. Alyssa came back at 12:57 a.m., hauling her duffel, laughing with a teammate across the hall whose mascara had surrendered hours ago. She fumbled her keycard at the door, dropped it, picked it up, tried again, succeeded. She didn't turn on the overhead light because that would be rude. She whispered, "Jess, you awake?" There was no answer. She didn't expect one. She brushed her teeth in the dark with her phone's flashlight on the counter because she was considerate to a fault. Only after she peeled off her hoodie and slipped into bed did she notice the glow on Jessica's desk. She tilted her head, half asleep, and saw the singular, ordinary object that didn't belong where it was. The spare metal key. "Why?" she said out loud, the way people do when they want a room to answer. It didn't. She considered texting, "Where are you?" Then she pictured Jess in the study lounge or the vending machine room or walking around the block to clear her head, because sometimes being 19 makes the walls too close. She set an alarm for 7:30 because they had a Sunday morning thing where they'd go to the farmer's market and pretend to buy vegetables before getting muffins. She smiled at the thought and fell asleep in under a minute. On the desk, the laptop timed out and went black. The key stayed luminous in the string lights, a lighthouse for a ship that had already slipped the horizon. People always ask, when did it happen? As if you can put a pin in a map and say, here, this is the exact minute the world changed shape. Maybe it was when Jess chose to put her phone face down. Maybe it was when she chose the stairs over the elevator. Maybe it was earlier, weeks earlier, when a sentence in a kitchen made her feel like a person worth listening to. In missing persons cases, there are never single moments. There are always a dozen small ones that behaved like one. At 1:08 a.m., a text arrived on Jessica's phone from an unknown number. "Still up?" It lit the room for exactly 3 seconds and then surrendered. Outside, the campus turned its face toward Sunday. And Jessica Miller, 19, media studies, dorm room 314, spare key on the desk, walked out of the frame.